Can Utah win the Big 12 in 2024? We're talking about it on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen every single day. We are available on all platforms, including YouTube and wherever you may get your podcasts. This is your first time listening, so make sure you guys like and subscribe. My name is JT Wistcill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. And on today's show, we're talking all things Utah to the Big 12. Before we fully dive into the 2023 Utah football season, their final in the Pac-12, thought it'd be fun to look ahead a little bit to the biggest news, obviously the college football off season, that all these teams have been relocating, changing conferences, and that includes Utah going over to the Big 12. And in order to help me do that, it is the host of the Locked On Big 12 podcast, Drake C. Toll. And Drake, when talking about Utah in the Big 12, can they win it in 2024? I think they can. It's going to be difficult, as we're going to talk about in a second, but I do think there's a chance that they can win this conference just because of the level that Utah football has been playing at the last few seasons. And they're going to lose a lot after this year, as I said. We'll talk about that in a second, but they're going to have a lot of guys coming back, and just the identity and the style they play. You know, defense wins championships, run the ball, control the clock. Utah's always going to be really good at this thing. So while there's questions about how the quarterbacks are going to be next year as well, I do think if Utah is strong in the trenches, and I expect them to be again, and they run the football, I do think that there is a chance that Utah could win the Big 12 in 2024.
You know, no Dalton Kincaid this season. No Mr. Pick Six and Clark Phillips. It really, Utah's trajectory into the Big 12, to me, depends on how well this team can play in 2023. Can Utah show in the last year of the Pac-12, we are a caliber unit that can win the conference? To me, they're my pick. A lot of Washington is smoke and mirrors. I think Utah has it set up with Cam Rising, if he can stay healthy, to win the Pac-12. Here's the problem, and here's the reason Utah will not win the Big 12 in 2024. Now, I want to preface this. Somebody out there is screaming at the TV or screaming at their phones like, oh, yes, they can. Kansas can win the Big 12 in 20. Any team can, quote, can win the Big 12. Somebody's got to do it. The reason why Utah will not do it is inconsistency under Kyle Whittingham. And again, somebody is screaming at their phone and their TV. Look, all 16 teams can have me on. I can't say that all of them can win the Big 12. Look at this, a loss to Oregon State, a loss to San Diego State, a loss to BYU a couple years ago. Then last season, you drop a game to UCLA, Oregon, Penn State, Florida. Those are better teams, but still, where's my big one? Kyle, where's my big one? Where's my you can't come into
USC last year? That's not a big one?
You can take Lincoln Riley year one USC. That's fine. I got to watch Lincoln Riley get his ass handed to him a couple of times in Waco against Baylor teams that weren't that good. So when I look at Utah, I asked you, can your 4 losses win the Big 12? Can your 4 losses? And I think no. And here's also this too. Take it with a grain of salt. Take it with a grain of salt, because I don't hate Utah. I really don't. I think I've said that on a show before, but I don't. I do think Texas Tech's going to own this league for years to come. I think Kansas State is really good. I believe that there are a couple of these new teams. Maybe Colorado under Deion Sanders can have a turnaround. Utah, to me, is it, and here you go. I'm not blowing hot air up your skirt. I'm telling you how it is. Utah, to me, is a upper half, obviously, Big 12 team in 2024. Can they compete with Texas Tech and Kansas State and TCU, who just went to the national championship game? I'm not going to say yes yet. I'm not going to say they can win this league yet. I need to see it before I can blow that hot air up your skirt.
First of all, I like that you came in hot right there. I personally
got fired up. I'm sorry, JT. I got to take it.
You started out so well. You won us all over. You're like, going Clark Phillips, Dalton Kincaid. Like, I like Utah. They're my pick to win. And then you totally swept the rug out from under all these.
And then they're not my pick to win the Big 12 in 2024. I'll give you the Pac-12 this year, but not the Big 12 next year.
Like I said, I disagree with a few of the things, but I'd rather focus on the Big 12 persona, especially. The biggest reason I think that can Utah win the Big 12 in 2024?
Yeah.
Yes, they can, but it's going to be really tough because I just don't know. We haven't seen look, Utah, they've won a lot. I mean, when you look at their last 3 full seasons, they've won 31 games. That would be the most of any Big 12 team in that span. And when I say full seasons, I take out the COVID year. But I will add with an asterisk, had the COVID year been in place, and yeah, Cam got hurt against USC, so that's another thing where it's like, well, maybe they would have been better if they had Cam again. I don't think Utah was set up for as much of a successful year that year. Jake Bentley really struggled. So there's some other things as well. I can get behind some of the things that you brought up, but it's just hard when you're going to lose. This Utah team could lose their top 2 running backs. They will use their quarterback. They're going to lose their best, not 1, but 2 pass catchers. And then defensively as well, you're going to lose 1 linebacker, potentially 2 to 3 defensive linemen that are really
JT,
good.
are you hearing what you're saying right now?
Yeah.
Are you hearing what you're explaining to me? And then you disagree with me and say that Utah can. I'm not saying they can't.
I was trying to be devil's advocate, play both sides.
Saying
You just jumped in right away with the negative side. So I would love to hear for you how, since I drove in the negative there, what would be Utah's path to winning the Big 12 this year?
Utah's path to winning the Big 12 in 2024 is cannibalism. It's cannibalism.
Yeah.
It's the Donner Party. It's what it is the team that wins the league goes 9-3. Utah has not proven under Kyle Whittingham, hey, we can go undefeated. And look, that's a tough thing to do. It's a terribly tough thing to do. So that's no slight on Whittingham.
I don't know if any of those Big 12 teams have proven that recently either. That are
Bingo. And that's what's going to help Utah is this is a league of cannibals. A 9-3 team can win the conference. A 10-2 team can win the conference. If Utah can play with consistency, if Utah can get over the hump, because you look at what has killed some of these recent Big 12 champions is a kind of a rogue loss. Like a Baylor lost in the regular season to Oklahoma State and then came back and won it. You got a TCU team that obviously their season, what they got their first loss in the Big 12 championship game against Kansas State, but at 12-1, that Baylor team's a 12-win team. Give me a Utah team that can go 9-3, 10-2 in a year where everybody else in the Big 12 goes 9-3, 10-2. There's your shot at a Big 12 championship. And I believe here's where you get a great advantage. Utah knows what it's like to play in a conference title game. If you've got a 9-3 Oklahoma State against 10-2 Utah in the Big 12 championship game, give me the Utah Utes because they've been in conference championship games. They've won conference championship games under Whittingham. So if you get up to the doorstep, if you get right there, I've got a lot of confidence in Utah. It's just a matter of being one of the lucky teams who are 9-3, 10-2 that are able to wiggle their way into that mix the way the algorithm, the ratio, whatever it is, falls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And the one thing that's really, we are in uncharted territory for this coming college in 24 and just in general is all these teams relocating conferences. We haven't seen how are these teams going to do in New Year's, playing in new environments, against new teams, new recruiting landscapes. How is all that going to change everything? I think that's going to be really interesting to watch overall. Just because I have a little bit more time before I want to squeeze an ad read in, I will say to a couple of the points you made against Utah, the 21 season, I get what you're saying with the San Diego State and BYU game. I will say Cam Rising came in, didn't play against BYU, and that was Charlie Brewer. And I know I know Brewer was your guy and did some cool things, but this
not my guy.
Was
not my guy.
Not your guy.
Not my guy.
Not your guy.
It wasn't your guy either.
He's definitely not my guy. I thought maybe just because of a little bit of the success you guys had, you might like to claim him a little bit more, but apparently not. But yeah, we really Utah. That was not the best version of that team that year because they hadn't had Cam in there yet. San Diego State, he came in at half because Brewer was struggling so much and then mounted a comeback. But you do have a really good point about the road losses last year, the ones against UCLA and Oregon. I know Cam was dinged up a little bit, but still not. But I mean, he's worth showing as a quarterback. Just in general was a tough look, and you should find a way to win that Week 1 Florida game overall. I think if Utah would go back, they really wish they could have too. So I think a lot of good points and fair points you made about why Utah could not struggle, but still not go to the Big 12 championship. Yeah,
JT, there's a lot of coulda, woulda, shoulda in there, and I get it, right? Everybody is, we were on the cusp, we were right there, and look at a Baylor team that was 6-7 last year, who I liken to a Utah or a BYU. To me, there's a pot of teams, 5 or 6 that have had recent success in their conferences from the Pac-12 or the Big 12, who remind me of each other, and there are a lot of fan bases who say, we could have won that, or we were close to winning that, and I agree, I 100% agree, but I also again. Still lost the games.
Yes. And you're right. And that's what will be interesting to see if they can do it against a slew of new opponents come in 2024. And one thing that's going to hinge on Utah's success in 2024 is just the state of the program in general. Because as we mentioned, they're going to be losing a lot of talent. So that is what we're going to be talking about in 1 second. But first, want to talk to you guys about our friends at BetterHelp. This episode of Locked On Utes is sponsored by BetterHelp. with BetterHelp, they allow you guys to do a lot of great things. You can take the time when you feel uncertain about what you have going on in life or what the right path was and is, just how you go through it. Sometimes in life, we're faced with tough choices and the path forward isn't always clear. Whether you're dealing with a decision around career, relationship, or anything else, therapy helps you stay connected to what you really want while you navigate life, so you can move forward with confidence, excitement. Trusting yourself to make decisions that align with your values is like anything. The more you practice, the easier it gets overall. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suitable to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matches with licensed therapists and switch therapists anytime with no additional charge. Let therapy be your map with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedoncollege today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedoncollege. Alrighty, Drake, coming back into this one. When talking about where does Utah football rank in the new Big 12?
Yeah.
I think based on, if you're, like I mentioned, if you're looking at some of the recent success overall, just what they've achieved, Pac-12 champs back-to-back years, and they'll be the ones coming into this as well who just have that success of, I mentioned, 3 years. They've won 31 games. That would be the most of any team in that span. In 23, they were the highest ranked recruiting class over Big 12 members overall. TCU was second, TCU was right behind them. Utah was at 20th. They were at 21 overall in 2023 recruiting class for members that are going to be in the conference in 2024. Obviously, the Oklahoma and Texas, they were higher. There's no saying that.
Well, but, JT, and I don't mean to hijack. I'm not going to hijack your show here. Is that 24/7? Where'd you find that?
I did go to 24/7. We don't use 24/7 in the Big 12?
We absolutely use 24/7 in the Big 12. And last updated on August 21st, my 24/7 showing Utah behind teams like Kansas State, UCF, Baylor, Texas Tech, TCU.
For the 23 or 24?
23.
Oh,
okay. We have different 24/7s here?
Yeah, I don't.
You know what? We're going to err on the side of yours.
Hey, it's my show, so I like that.
Bingo.
But either way, I think this Utah team is recruiting at a high level. They've won a lot overall. So I agree with you. I think they have to be towards the top. If you're talking about recent success of the teams that are going to be there, I think I can make an argument for them to be number one overall. But I do think it's fair to, as you mentioned, take in the totality and the history. And this is a Utah football program that is going to be going through a change overall. But I do believe, I genuinely think they belong in the top 5 overall. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I here's this. I would say from a recruiting standpoint for Utah, and I meant that in jest, talking about 24/7.
Yeah.
They what I use is Brett Ciancia at Pick Six Previews. His magazine is spectacular.
Very good job.
He has Utah at 21 in his picks right now, and number 26 team in the last 5 years in recruiting, and that is huge. That is huge. Recruiting is going to be big in this conference. I am a little leery of Utah's recruiting in 2024. That's where I look and say, oh, whoa, what are we doing here? But also UCF is the number 1 team in the Big 12 in 24, according to 24/7. So I think things are going to shake out in a really weird way. Utah still has not put together even half of its class. And you hold out for transfers as well. Look, here's your clip. You'd be an idiot to think Utah's not a top 5 team in the Big 12 in 2024. You'd be an absolute idiot. And there are going to be some idiots who put Utah at 6 or 7 or 8 in the preseason rankings that year in that 16-team league. Hell, I might be one of those idiots when the time comes. But as it sits right now, body of work, you're getting the best Pac-12 team in football into the Big 12. Do I think they win it in year 1? I don't know. Not for me to say yes, but I do know they're a top 5 team. The only thing, the biggest thing that's sliding Utah right now is a portion. I want to give you a lot of credit. A small portion, but a vocal portion of the fan base has been atrocious. There have been so many, I'm going to call them rogue Utah fans that have said, oh, we hate the Big 12. And they've been fighting it for a year. We would never want to be in the Big 12. And what I want to do, if you go back to a show that you recorded, could Utah go to the Big 12? And you scroll through the comments, guaranteed almost everyone says, I would hate to be in the Big 12. The Pac-12 is the best place to be. Utah was riding the ship down. The Big 12 had a lifeboat. Utah was riding the Titanic down and refusing the lifeboat. And then once Utah got in the lifeboat, they started spitting in the faces of the other members in the lifeboat. I don't get it. I don't. But I think the normal Utah fans happen to have you. The 5 of you that just are the worst, you can stay in the Pac-12. You can die with George Kliavkoff. It's fine by me.
The loudest sometimes could just make it seem like there's more than there are. The
silent majority is good, and I like a lot of Utah fans. Yes. I like a lot of Utah fans. Yes. They're great on Twitter as well. But, man, the sucky ones suck.
I could definitely get behind that. And I think another thing as well, because for a while, I got a lot of flack for saying I wanted Utah to stay in the Pac-12, but that was simply because
that was you. You were one of them.
I was one of them.
God bless, man.
Let me finish. I had said I knew what it would do to the Pac-12 if we left, and I did not. I don't like the position that Oregon State and Washington State are in right now. And I'm a traditionalist. I like the way things were in college football. I enjoy that, like just playing Baylor, as we're going to talk about in our next segment. Like that was this special kind of preseason early thing. I think that was going to be a lot of fun overall. Like I said, my thing was I just didn't love what it was going to do overall to the Pac-12, and we're seeing that play out now with some of these schools in a lot of limbo overall, and just the state of college football in general. But it is going to be exciting that Utah gets there as well. You mentioned, and we both think Utah belongs in the top 5. When you're talking about the other teams that belong up there, I think you do obviously put TCU there based on what they've done too. And I'm very curious to see what kind of season TCU is going to add. It seems like some people have overrated and a lot of people have underrated them, just expecting that regression because of some of the talent they've lost. You mentioned Texas Tech is set up for a lot of success. I do like that team coming into this year, especially with the quarterback they have over there as well. And Kansas State, what they've been able to build too. And I'd throw Baylor in there. I think that plus Utah would be kind of my 5 for the top 5 programs. Any other ones you would swap in?
It's not bad. I do think, oh, here it comes.
Oh no. I'm worried about what you're going to say.
I do think the Cougars, I do think not the Cougars of Houston, but the Cougars of BYU will make a case. They will make a case.
Case. I got that. As long as you didn't say above. Above, we would have closed the episode.
No. I think Kalani Sitake pulls it together. And they're a good. I am just excited to have Utah and BYU. Look, let's be very clear here. Everybody, let's all gather in real close. Utah has dominated BYU in history, has dominated BYU in the history of this series. Let's get even closer. Utah has dominated BYU in the last decade. The last 10 years have not been close. Utah owns this rivalry. So of course you can't put BYU above Utah when you look at the head-to-head in the last decade or so. So I want to put that out there, but I do think BYU can make a case to be good in the Big 12.
Well, and first of all, I absolutely agree with that. I think there's definitely a world they can get boosted overall. And one thing we can talk about as well is, Drake, I'm just excited that this rivalry, I think, is going to get more attention than it's always deserved. 100%. Everyone in Utah always gets excited, right? Like I'm newer to the 100%. Rivalry since going to Utah. There's only been a couple of rivalry games that I've been able to experience as part of. But the hype here has always been good. But the national hype, like ESPN just never, like ESPN would broadcast it. They didn't really care. Like it wasn't that big of a deal. And look, if it goes into rivalry week, it will get swept up a little bit in the Auburn, the Iron Bowl, of course, the game, Ohio State, Michigan, some of those. But I do think it's going to get a lot more attention. I think, especially because some of these finishes have been a lot of fun. You had a couple years ago with Jason Shelley, a Texas high school football legend as well. Led a crazy comeback against the Cougars. Like if that's in rivalry weekend, I think that gets a little bit more hype nationally versus it seems like only people in Utah know about that. So I think this rivalry in general is going to be a great boost for the Big 12's brand too.
100%. This is one of the top 10, top 15 rivalries in college football. I really believe that. And it is the premier rivalry in the Big 12, if not, sorry God, the only rivalry in the Big 12. And I know what you're thinking. Oh, there's Baylor, TCU, and there's Farmageddon and Arizona State. Nope. Let me be very clear. Nobody cares. Nationally, nobody cares. When you ask somebody, name a top 15 rivalries in college football, none of those come up. Think the Sunflower Showdown? That's a terrible name for a rivalry.
I didn't know that was the name of the rivalry.
Kansas State. It is terrible. This is the only rivalry in the Big 12 right now that gets national recognition. The others, maybe they hate each other, but at the end of the day, nobody really cares.
Yeah, and I compare the ones you were talking about to what the Pac-12 tried to make Utah and Colorado into for so long, which was never a rivalry. It was never anything between the fan bases overall. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Football season is about to kick off, and FanDuel is giving you a chance to win all season long. Because right now, when you bet on a Super Bowl winner, you can get bonus bets every time they win in the regular season. Just pick a team to win the Super Bowl, and you'll get bonus bets for every victory. If you guys think this is the year for your squad, you can get rewarded for that every time they win in the regular season by going in and making the Super Bowl bet on FanDuel Sportsbook. And you can use the bonus bets you win every time your team that you think is going to win the Super Bowl just gets a regular season win on things like the spread, player props, over-unders, and even more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. So make sure you guys head over to FanDuel and check out the great offer that our friends at FanDuel have going on for you today. You know what would be really fun, Drake, is if when rivalry rivalries develop between just other programs that aren't like traditionally thought of as rivalries when the new one's brought up. And I think Utah versus Baylor has the potential to be that. And that's going to start with them playing this season. I think when you look at Dave Aranda and you look at Kyle Whittingham, two defensive-minded coaches overall that obviously would prefer to run the football offensively, but are willing to put it in the hands of a quarterback they trust in general. But this game is going to be a lot of fun this year. It's a cloud of mystery right now because of the Cam Rising health situation, even the Brant Kuithe health situation. But the nice thing for Utah is their first game against Florida is the 31st. They don't play Baylor until I want to say the 9th, I believe it is now, but they play on the Thursday. They don't play again until the Saturday. So they get a couple extra days, and every day could matter when you talk about the rest and recovery overall. If Cam plays, I definitely think Utah can go in and beat Baylor. Heck, I would predict them to beat Baylor. I just think this Utah team with the level they're operating at right now, but I definitely think if Cam plays, Baylor can absolutely win this game still. And I think they very well could be favored just because it's at home, especially. And if Cam doesn't play, Utah is going to be in a lot of trouble if they have to go down to Waco, I believe.
It's tough because you get a Baylor team that really sucked last year. They were bad, 6-7 overall. At one point,
I know that's why you're high on the future of BYU.
Right, of course, because they beat 6-7 Baylor. This is a squad under Aranda that won a Sugar Bowl, that won a Big 12 championship. They've got the right pieces back. They brought in the Barrington brothers from BYU to anchor the offensive line. Baylor's going to win 8 or 9 games by virtue of the home schedule. 8 home games this year is absurd. If Cam Rising doesn't play, Utah could certainly be one of them. There's too many question marks around Baylor to really give a good, all right, this is what's going to happen in week 2. And there are too many question marks around whether or not Cam Rising plays for Utah. Yeah. Utah is the better team, but I can tell you this, JT, they're going to show up in Waco. It's going to be in the 105 degree range with 38-40% humidity. The on the field temperature will be about 100. This is real, 140 to 150 degrees. And the hottest I've seen it at McLean Stadium is 181 degrees. The players change shoes at halftime. I'm worried. They also don't allow shade, no cover, no shade on the visiting side for opposing teams. Utah, as you know, people say, it's just the elements. There's no way to practice for that. Utah's they're in for a big wake-up call because of that alone.
And Drake, can you guess what this Utah's worst defensive performance of 2022, what environment it came in?
Oh, would you tell me it was hot, humid, and muggy?
I would tell you that.
Well, and it sucks. It sucks. To me, I too, college football traditionalist to an extent, believe that this game should be moved to AT&T Stadium in Dallas.
Ooh,
you got two really good, and obviously it can't. It won't be. There's no way that would ever happen. But you have two teams that are really good at football that deserve to play a game that's not affected by the weather. But reminds me of Iowa State. Iowa State would come down in Baylor's schedule, usually the first Big 12 game every year, and a lot of those were in the 100-degree range, and you could tell they couldn't have shade on the sidelines. That those kids from Iowa were really struggling out there with the weather. It's going to happen. You know, it's happened to Albany last year when they came down. It's going to happen. And it sucks that's going to play such a big part in this game, but put that as storyline number 2 behind Cam Rising.
Yeah, and it is something as well, because we both agree like that is going to play a massive role, as we just discussed, as it played last year at Florida. But we also said Utah's the better team. And they were one Cam Rising better decision away. I know we did the whole if, ands, or buts thing, so don't jump on me for that in the second year, Drake. But if Cam had made the right decision, and I'm trying to even remember if there were other people that were open. I think Dalton might have been open for a second, but either way, not throwing a turnover there, Utah still wins, even in that hot of environment. So Utah is absolutely capable of going in and getting a win down there. But it's going to be fascinating to see how it all plays out in week 2, Drake. And it's just going to be fascinating to see how this whole situation works out with Utah to the Big 12, the 4 corner schools, all the other additions to the Big 12 in general. Now that we are officially on to this chapter, it's something I'm really excited about, all these new opponents and everything that it's going to lead to. As the host of Locked On Big 12, I am curious, what is your thoughts on everything?
So look at this. I'm going to say it. BYU fans have made us all think that BYU is the biggest brand in the state of Utah. And the reason BYU is the bigger brand nationally is because Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, they are the Army Navy of religious schools. When BYU plays in Houston, they pack out the stadium because they send so many missionaries across the country. And it's not like that's not in jest either. I have an affinity for schools that have history, a commitment to faith. I mean, that's great. I went to Baylor. So you've got a massive fan base, and you are the flagship school, the fastest growing religion in the world. So you get the brand from that. Okay. Mm-hmm. Football wise, let me rattle off something. Utah, top 25 at all-time win percentage, top 25 in wins in the last 100 years, last 50 years, last 25 years, last 10 years. Win percentage last 5 years are number 13 in the country. Top 15 team in game grades over the last 10 years. So that kind of gives you a metric on consistency dating back to 2013. All of that, JT, boils down to the word good. That's the dominant football program in the state of Utah. So BYU can claim the brand. Utah has a historic football program that we overlook because BYU screams in your face. And I love BYU fans. I like the silent majority of Utah fans. I have appreciation for both. But let's be clear with what that rivalry is, what it brings to the Big 12, and what Utah is. Utah is the football powerhouse. Look at the all-time, was like 62-35 against BYU. Yeah, look at that and know that Utah is going to be just fine in the Big 12.
Drake, I'm very curious how Utah fans are going to react to this episode, because if by some miracle they made it to the end of the first segment in which you were poo-pooing Utah, I hope they made it through your first part of that, which you were taking down Utah, and then proceeded to profusely praise them after talking about BYU. So I'm hoping they made it through, because I think the majority of them will like you. But Drake, I can't lie to you. You might still get a couple of those fans coming at you after something.
They're going to love me, and they're going to hate me, but no matter what, they watched. That's all I need.
That's true. That is absolutely true. Drake, we greatly appreciate you joining us. And if people are excited about the Big 12 and want to learn more about these teams in 2023, of course, where should they head over and listen to?
Well, you can block me at Drake Seatoll, or you can follow me at LO Big 12. A lot of content at LO Big 12, or on the Locked On Big 12 podcast, wherever you get your podcast, or on YouTube as well. Go find us on YouTube. It's usually a lot of engaging guests, such as yourself, JT. A lot of fun stuff going on over there.
Drake, it was great having you on. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely, JT, anytime.
All righty, that's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Utes. We'll be back tomorrow talking season predictions and diving into more things Utah football related.